And speaking of that, mine is on. Okay, we're ready to go when you are.
Okay, go ahead. All right. Good evening. I'd like to call the Park and Recreation Advisory Committee meeting for June 30th to order. We'll start with introductions on my right.
Bob Burns. Doug Nooney.
Blaine Meyer.
Mike Mitchell.
Joyce Gifford.
Roger Fowler Tice.
He's Conrad Staff.
And I'm Sean Datchler, the chair. And the first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from last month. Did anybody have any corrections or changes?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, I guess no citizen comments. So the first thing we'll have is a presentation from Evan Connell, Party with a Purpose. Why don't you come on up? So a little background. Several weeks ago, Evan and I met, and he talked to me about what he's going to tell you guys about tonight and his vision. And so he got in touch with Denise, and my understanding is they talked about some of the other challenges that might occur with a project like this, and so he's familiar with those. And so this is kind of the first step in kicking something like this off, is starting with us, because this involves some parkland. So, Evan, welcome.
Very good. Thank you very much. I appreciate being welcomed here to the committee to talk with you about this exciting project. So last year, Party with the Purpose Foundation, we were established about 4 years ago, but we've got a history of 10 years. We started a very successful children's charity event. We've raised about $1.5 million for children's charities over the 10 years that we've thrown the party. We created Party with the Purpose Foundation to house that event, and last year, to the things that we've done, we've added a veteran event. Last year, we went to Malala and jumped out of an airplane, and we raised money for the VFW Post, Team Red, White, and Blue, and the Oregon Military Museum. And this year, we thought we would do the same thing again, but in talking with DJ, he mentioned to me about the 50th anniversary of the beginning of Vietnam. And I found out later that there was this memorial that was being considered for the VFW property. So that's really what kicked off the enthusiasm about doing that event this year, was we really wanted to honor the Vietnam vet. Last year our event was to honor those that had served in World War II, and this year the Vietnam Memorial just seemed like a wonderful opportunity. The more we found out about this and the site, the excitement grew to have it be more than just honoring the one who had received the Medal of Honor here in Oregon City, but there were 4 that had received that, and there was 800 that didn't make it back from the war. So we thought that we could create a monument that would honor all those, as well as those that are missing in action and the POWs that serve there in this memorial. So I wanted to first bring up the images of what we've rendered, working with a landscape architect who I brought up to the site. If we were to be able to do this, I wanted to work in the area that we thought it would be most appropriate to put it in. So this first site is bringing into those 2 spaces just so that those that aren't familiar with the site could know where the current monument sits and where the future monument that we are talking about with you all this evening would sit. In our discussions, we've decided that whether we would have that memorial marker for Larry Dahl or not be part of our monument, we want to move forward because we feel that this monument is a very special one and a very beautiful place, and to sit in a very proud place in front of the Oregon City VFW post on Oregon City ground overlooking the falls would be a beautiful place to have such a monument. The second image, if you can draw that, and on that second page there that I've passed along to you, this would be the first page I passed along to you, is the actual rendering of where that monument would sit along the McLaughlin Promenade. We took careful measurements, and he laid out the vision of what he thought this monument could look like, and it really is a beautiful and a special thing. So it's not a long stretch of ground there, and we're using some space that's existing between the promenade and the parking lot to put this together. If you flip to the next image, you can get a look of what the visual would look like. A serpentined wall. The bricks in that wall would, of course, be 800 of them would have the names of those that didn't make it back. On the far side of the wall, if the Dahl Memorial was part of this monument, the artist thought that it would be appropriate to put there. We've since found out that there's 4 Medal of Honor recipients, so we want to make mention of all of those as well as the POWs and the MIAs.
You may have already mentioned this, but is it 800 from Oregon?
800 from Oregon.
Yep.
The number's around 803.
Okay.
So when I say 800, don't hold me to the historical the accuracy.
And I'm just jumping in, but there's a trail that's being proposed that would continue from the promenade up through Kanema, near the Stillhouse, Highland Stillhouse, and then up through Old Kanema. It looks like this. How would the path continue on up because this looks like it kind of blocks?
Yeah, and that's a great question. This is a rendering of what he would suggest as a starting point on what this memorial could look like. So this
There
isn't.
might be a better way to do it. That
Yeah.
you guys have thought through another way to get up there, and it's
Yeah, we certainly wouldn't want to block any artery or change anything of what your vision would be for the promenade.
Yeah.
But as far as an iconic monument in front of a very important building inside of Oregon City on that bluff,
Oh, yeah.
I think it would be a very, very beautiful
Yeah, this is
thing to
cool.
have. So,
Yeah.
are there some other questions?
Well, just sort of to go along with what Blaine just said, that and it's on our agenda later on tonight, is the grant to study the feasibility, possible routing or whatever, and that trail would go all the way from Willamette Falls to Kanema. And I think this is a wonderful idea. It's a beautiful rendering. Don't get me wrong, but the concern would be if that trail hasn't been routed yet, and this ends up being where the logical routing should be for the trail. If it fits in, that's great. That will just bring more traffic past it. But if it becomes kind of a block, and you end up, you're not where it would have been the ideal place for it. So it's kind of a matter of timing. And are we getting a chicken before the egg or whatever?
And that could be. When we
analogy
came
is.
up with this idea, the beautiful thing about the 3 years that they honor the Vietnam War is a 3-year honoring. This is the second of the third year. So the date that if all were perfect, the date that we would like to unveil the monument would be the National POW MIA Day, which is the third Friday of September every year. So we would be looking at the third Friday of September 2017. If that were to come together, that's when we would want to unveil this and have a national a recognition on that national day every year at the VFW post. The VFW post already honors veterans on that day. They have a recognition that day. They open it to the community to come in and be part of that. And DJ might want to speak more to that. But this would be a beautiful addition to what is that day, and I think would just draw more attention. Not to mention that everyone that would walk by that would see it and be reminded of those that have served.
And if you walk the area, this right now is just kind of rock and brush, and so it's really just cleaning up the slope, if you will, and not impacting the current trail. I'd be shocked if they would be moving that trail alignment. They would probably use it and continue on as long as this doesn't tee it off at the end.
Well, and I'm not even sure that the promenade trail, because VFW, that's private property, isn't it? So
That part is
I
the
can
city.
speak to that. I'm
It's the city.
DJ Rubin.
That part is-
I'm the post commander of the VFW
Okay.
post. We do not own that property. That
Okay.
belongs to the Parks Department. The way it's currently used, and the overhead rendering on the right of the screen here, it looks like it's blocking off the end
Right.
that's access to the parking lot. And that is not at all the concept at all. The concept is to have it open from the parking lot for people to be able to
Okay.
come through.
Got it,
So if
got
you're
it.
planning a trail to go down the side of the parking lot, down past the museum and on, it's your property. We would want access through there.
yeah,
We don't want it to be pigeonholed just to access to the bridge, not at all.
right, yeah, good.
I'm going to speculate that trail system is not going to be done by 2017.
No.
Thing is that, people revisit Willamette Falls and so forth, but the point is, you make that connection's still going to be into the promenade. A lot of people will perhaps want to walk over to Chapin from the falls and maybe walk back and use the elevator. And so I think when we don't know exactly when it's going to happen, it's going to have a lot of funding to be able to do it. We know that a lot of people walk on that promenade now. My guess is the traffic will increase once that trail is there. But it would be nice if they could do it on the date that they're talking about. There's the possibility once they build that overpass, which would actually probably be an overpass over the tracks as well. The one that's there, of course, just goes right down into McLaughlin. When they do that, it may well be that this overpass disappears, or maybe it doesn't. I mean, people might want to just access McLaughlin. Not that many people use that overpass. There's nothing, when you get on the other side there, it's nice to get to the falls, but the scenery directly around it and to the tunnel isn't all that great. But the thing is that I think it'd be nice, and maybe what I was going to suggest is something like this, if it's possible, that you probably have the capability of including the memorial to Larry Dahl in this place. If the possibility is that it could be, it's nice to have it here, that would be my preference, but it might be that it could be at another point on the trail when we're over there at the Clackamas Historical Society talking to them. They want that to become more of a visitor center than the museum they have now. My preference would be to have the memorial for Larry Dahl to be there, but it does belong to the Historical Society, and if the negotiations with them tend to be somewhat difficult, it's still I'd like to see that memorial on the overpathway that actually goes from the museum to the connections to the thing, and maybe there are two sites where they could see a memorial, one specifically for Larry Dahl. I got the feeling that the Clackamas Historical Society wants to see that on their own land somehow or another, and that should not be an and should inhibit this project for going forward.
And I agree. They've got a beautiful memorial, and it's beautiful that they would honor him in that way with that stone, and it's theirs to decide where that goes.
Right.
So when in that discussion, I then realized that this needs to go forward as a separate item down a parallel path. If they would like to make that part of this, we absolutely would treat it as sacred.
You see, we've got 4 Medal of Honor?
4 Medal of Honor recipients from Oregon.
Okay.
Larry Dahl's the only one from Oregon City.
Okay. And so even, I imagine they're probably going to get special notice on the memorial in some way.
Correct.
He would still have that special.
He would be one of those 4.
Yeah, one of those
with
4.
that special recognition.
And I just don't want to. I just don't want you be held back by a trail that may be many years in the making. Mm-hmm. It's going to be expensive, and held up by the concerns of the Historical Society. And so I guess I agree with you. Things are going to change there, but this is going to be once that trail does develop, there's going to be heavier use of this. So it still, I think, is a great place to have it.
Yeah. And that wasn't. I wasn't saying it was not a good place, but you've already cleared it up. It was just the rendering showed that coming around and blocking, so that people couldn't pass behind those tire stops. Mm-hmm. And so, but you've already cleared that up.
Thank you.
Yeah, and when I saw the drawings, the first thing I kept remembering was that these were the first kind of really rough drafts. Is this even something we would want to put there? And I think if you get the green light, then the drawings are going to be refined quite a bit.
Correct.
For the next level.
Mm-hmm. The Parks Foundation recently wrote a grant up for this area for a planting, and it was right now it was just there's no plans, but it was thought we would plant that all in. But now that you have this here, we could still plant further up at the end of your monument, put plantings all the way up, and it might be a good opportunity. I don't know if there's a way of working the grants or the grant as part of it, or if you prefer to be doing this on your own. But we do have a grant in that with the Hardy Plant Society, and they advise us to since we didn't get it this year, we could reapply next year to get this, and I think it would lend itself to what you're doing, as all of that area cleaned up and replanted. And I don't know, there might be a way of partnering.
Wonderful.
So
we'd welcome the opportunity to partner with as many as we can. One of the things that I did want to bring up, and I appreciate DJ being here, Party with a Purpose Foundation is the one that spearheaded the idea, but we worked very closely with the VFW Post last year. They were not only a recipient but a participant in our skydiving event, and I got to be close with DJ and several of those over at the VFW Post. We share a nice relationship. This absolutely is going to be a project in tandem. We're doing it as a proud gift to those that have served, and I'm very proud to know that it would be involved with DJ and his post. The maintenance of this project, I know, is also something that you all wanted to hear about, and I'd like DJ to talk a little bit about the maintenance, because we've thought about that. It's your property, and we would want to maintain this
Absolutely.
memorial.
The Post has discussed this at length, and if this project goes forward in some form as it's conceived, directly adjacent to our building, we are prepared to make a permanent commitment to maintain the memorial, keep it clean, to provide security on it, and so it would fall on us. We would take responsibility for it, even though it'd be on your property, and we're there 7 or 8 times a week anyway. So if you haven't seen how busy we are now, there's almost always somebody down there. In fact, to address part of what you were saying earlier, Mr. Neely, I was there from 7 till 4 today with a painting project outside. I counted heads. 85 people went up that trail today.
Oh. Wow. On a weekday.
Do they go over the overpass or
A
not?
lot of them go over the bridge.
Okay.
A lot of them go right on down. Some of them were coming down and looking for the still house.
Bob, you had a question.
Yeah, I have. I think this is a wonderful project, and I learn every time we talk about it. I learn something new. Earlier, we were told, or I understood, we had 1 Medal of Honor recipient from Oregon. Now I hear tonight there are 4. 1 from Oregon City. I'd like to know where the other 3 are from. And my second question is, and I've asked this before, I'm not sure who knows the answer. Does Mr. Dahl have any relatives left in the area that would have an opinion on this?
The Historical Society has contacted some of his relatives, including his son, who is currently serving in the Army at Fort Huachuca in Arizona. One of their close friends has come up and walked through this area. Whether they're going to have, there's none in the area, but they are aware that we're trying to get the monument or the memorial moved to at least a more prominent location.
Do they have an opinion?
We haven't heard it. So it's really in the hands of the Historical Society. It's their property.
But that opinion ought to be a major factor, I believe.
Yes, absolutely. They do concur that it's a wonderful thing to try and get it out of the bushes and out where more people will see it.
I didn't even know it was there until we talked about it. I mean,
well, you and about 100,000 other people in this area.
How about the other 3?
One was from Roseburg. I know that. I don't have my notes with me, but the other 2 are from other parts of the state.
Vietnam or earlier?
These are all from Vietnam.
All Vietnam?
Yes.
All 4 from Oregon. That's amazing. Okay, thank you.
Denise.
So just as a point of process, I know Evan and I have discussed this, and I believe Sean and I have discussed this as well, but not just PrAC gets involved in this process. If this is something that we want to go forward with, that this would go through planning for minor site plan review and the requirements therein of that. There's the Historic Review Board that would also have to look at this project. The McLaughlin Neighborhood Association, as it's in their neighborhood. They may ask us to take a look at steep slopes, which is through engineering because it's right on the edge of the bluff, and then we're looking at additional weight on that edge. And then just in terms of, we talked about maintenance. We'd have to do either an IGA or just, gentleman's agreement in the maintenance capacity. And just in terms of, we also have a Vietnam memorial at the cemetery. Does Parks want to have and own 2 monuments of recognition? So I'm not weighing in either way, just making you aware that we have one already at the cemetery. This would be a second one, both within our department, within the city. So those are some points that have come up in terms of process and discussion.
I agree there needs process. I do want to come to the cemetery. There's very few names are on that memorial, and I think individuals will come up and try to get their loved ones on the memorial, but the fact is that I know we've lost a lot of people from Oregon City and the Clackamas County, and far more than the people on that particular memorial. I actually think if you put it in the cemetery, there's 2 things. Not that many people are going to view it. The second one, it's really going to detract from the other memorial because you're getting everybody on it, and that's not the case at the other memorial. Every time I've gone there to a Memorial Day service, I feel a sense of loss because so few people have gone up on the memorial. The other thing is the memorial for the murdered children that Mothers of Murdered Children put forward. I think it's a unique thing and probably ought to be separate from this memorial. So my opinion is that, and as a process, I understand that other people want to chime in, because so many of the people that are living today, particularly among our age groups, Vietnam was a very critical point in our history, and I think it needs a special recognition and a special place independent of the ones that are at the cemetery, and that's my personal opinion.
EJ.
Just real fast, from a conceptual point of view, which not on the rendering, but we've talked about whether or not the Dahl Memorial is moved up, having a separate block in the wall that lists those 4 recipients and their hometowns. Having a separate block in the wall that lists the MIA POWs who never came back, so that they also have a separate recognition. And then the 738 names on the bricks so that all Oregonians who died in Vietnam are all on one wall. That's the concept.
Joyce, you haven't said anything yet. That's surprising.
No, I'm just taking it all in. I'm looking out. Blaine brought up, the first thing I looked at the picture and thought, whoa, wait a minute, we're blocking this off. But they answered that question, and I was too wondering about the one. So the one at the cemetery only has the names of Oregon City residents, and this wall will be all Oregonians.
Correct.
Just making sure that I got that right in my mind.
Roger.
I just want to say that, I didn't mention them, I was talking before, but it is historically, monuments like this have always been in parks all over the world. Europe, they've always been there, and I think it's parks are a great place to have these historical monuments, and I think it's a great idea, and I hope that we can hope this goes through.
So as far as process, the way I see it is your timeline is very compressed. And so the first step is getting support from this group, and then you have to kind of walk it through those other groups and keep the ball rolling. So, I mean, I think it starts with us, and I'm not hearing any objections, but it'd probably be good to formalize our support for this.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to support the design of this project in that particular area to go forward through the appropriate entities.
Second.
Second? Any discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate this.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Now it's just begun, right?
Now it's just begun.
Now the fun part begins.
Is that a carpenter's?
And Evan,
Great idea.
you and probably some of the foundation. Do you guys have cards yet?
Yeah, but I don't have
So
it with me.
probably good to get you guys in contact with relating that grant.
If you've got it.
I've got some cards.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This isn't my party with purchase card.
Thank you.
What I do during the day.
Okay,
We're all a volunteer
Perfect.
organization also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
This is
Okay. Oh, you already got it.
I'm trying to eject it right now.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a
Thank
great
you.
evening. All right, next item up on the agenda is Dan Tupper's resignation and election of vice chair. I see two lines, but I assume it's kind of all one.
That's all one. Sorry, I'm kind
Oh,
of
no
I'm
problem.
multitasking here.
No problem.
And from the standpoint of the resignation of Dan Tupper, what is going to be the process for advertising the position?
Let's let her
Well,
catch up,
with-
I think. And
You know, with the resignation of a city commissioner, they said they're not even going to fill that position
Well, yeah.
until January,
Well,
so,
when's Dan's position closed? At the end of the year?
Yeah, his term ends December 31st of this year.
months back.
However, the commission appoints. The commission could, if they wanted to, they could appoint and extend that. Or they could appoint saying that it would be to that point or to that date. I don't want to use point and appoint. Or they could extend it through the next term process, which would be a 2-year term.
Just a bit of correction. The only power that the mayor has, independent of the rest of the commissioners, is to appoint people to the advisory committee. So the appointment would be made by the mayor.
Yep.
But anyway, that's the only power he's got. In the charter, anyway. Well, actually, there's another one. He can form the order of the agenda, not the agenda itself, but he can change the order of the agenda.
And I do know that there are a couple people interested in applying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
The reason I'm asking this is we had something embarrassing occur in the Natural Resource Committee. We had an opening, we had applications, and on the day that we were going to review those applications, another application came in, and we hadn't put a closing date on it. And so we extended and closed it effective the date that the second one came in. And so I was just wondering what the process was, because I think we'd have to have a definite closing date.
We can do a short announcement, or we can wait and do the appointments for the January timeframe. So we have options.
and you say you already have people interested?
We have a couple people who've mentioned they were interested.
My feeling would be there's no reason not to have another participant as soon as possible. One, two, we already have a wide opening before the next meeting. Next meeting's not till third week of September. So we could open and close it easily within that time frame, and then have a work session for interviews on that September meeting, and move forward with it. The appointment could
But-
take effect in theory by the October meeting.
are we asking somebody just to serve October, November, and December?
And I would suggest that we are basically early filling that term.
And I just request that either you or Denise speak to the mayor about this, that we could do that. I mean,
Yeah.
Early filling a 2-year term or a 4-year term?
It would
They're
be
all
a regular.
three.
They're all 3-year.
Sorry, I didn't speak. It would be the 3-year regular term, with an extension to backfill the
Okay.
vacant term.
All right.
When did Dan's term expire?
This
Just,
is
it'll just December 31st.
So really, we're only filling
Of this
2.5
year.
months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a logical time to interview. We're really just doing it 2 or 3 months early. and
Okay,
kind of,
so we're doing a pre-fill of a 3-year term.
Yeah.
So it's going to be 3 years and 3 months.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah, I think it's fine.
No reason to wait.
everybody agree?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, you had this puzzled look on
Well, I'm agreeing that we should get somebody as soon as possible, but can we pre-fill a
Yeah.
3-year term? Is that in our bylaws?
It's not specified, I believe.
Okay.
That is not specified, and it would be at the discretion based on appointment by the mayor.
By the mayor?
Right.
Okay.
That's.
Okay.
I think we're open to
But
that.
the sooner the better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to request of the mayor
Yes.
a pre-fill.
Yeah.
Well, the mayor can easily, at that January meeting, he can reappoint or, start the 3-year term.
And I don't have a problem. Well, so normal. I'm just thinking the next step. So say we have 3 applicants, and we have one that we fill. Then I would suggest that we hold those other 2 applicants for the remaining open seat if we have an open seat.
There would be 3.
Plus any new candidates that come in during the next open session, the
There-
October.
Yeah, there would be three folks that would be expiring at the same time. not
Terms that are
expiring at the same time.
Gordon, you and I are probably the next ones up. Well, you too. We got the 3 right here.
So it would be it would be December 31st of 2016, and if those folks are interested in re-upping or have the ability to re-up, then we make the recommendation. Typically, the committee makes a recommendation back to the mayor for another appointment.
Yeah.
So otherwise, if there were open seats and no reappointments looking like they were interested, they would look at applicants.
Right.
I think we have to look at applicants, whether we got somebody, I think we have to reapply, don't we?
You
Yeah,
do.
under the
Yeah.
current
Yeah.
process,
I did.
You're
I had to reapply.
right. I re-interviewed along with new applicants.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
So, okay.
I say we just pick the one that makes the largest contribution to the Parks Foundation.
It's an independent group.
Okay. So
We're
next
going to
is
strike that.
so next is election of the vice chair, and I emailed everybody earlier this week, and I hope you guys have had a chance to think about it. Is there somebody that just already wants to raise their hand and say they'll do it, or do I have to appoint?
Nomination?
Would you say that one more time? I got it now.
Oh, were you volunteering?
I'll tell you, I will make a nomination, and then the nominee could go ahead and could refuse it. I'd like to nominate Joyce.
Yeah,
well.
second that.
I'm thinking my term is up in December.
I would have to look at.
That's
don't
what I
have
was
that in
trying to
front of me.
look and see, and I don't think I'm available for re-election at this time.
Term
Are you
limited?
done? Are you
I
terminated?
might be because I filled in a partial term.
Well, fortunately, this is just to finish out the year, Joyce.
Right. We have
Just
new
to
election.
And you're here through
Just-
the end of the year, unless you resign early.
To finish out the year, I
That's
will
all it is.
accept that nomination.
Right. Are there any other nominations?
I move the nominations be closed.
Hearing no more nominations, all in favor that Joyce is the new vice chair of PrAC, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. All right.
Abstains.
Do I get a pass? Oh, no, wrong motion. You don't get the gavel. All right, non-smoking in Parks policy update. So earlier we met in work session and discussed new proposed language, including the whereas statements. The actual line 11 in the park rules, there were no corrections or changes to that element. We had no whereas statements earlier, and now we've started. Joyce, can you kind of summarize those 3 topics? What the goal, Doug, for example, was to give several whereas statements back to the city attorney so that he can kind of expand that to finalize this.
The 3 topics for the whereas that were discussed at our work session was, number 1, that the purpose of the parks is to promote a healthy lifestyle. And number 2, to reduce, and I see if I can find the exact wording here, to Part B, to protect the public health, safety, and welfare by reducing unwanted and unwelcome exposure to secondhand smoke. And Part 3, the whereas the Surgeon General has even said that secondhand smoke is a hazard to our health, that we do not want their smoking to annoy, inconvenience, or discomfort any other person.
Are there any other kind of suggestions on that, or is that good?
Sounds good.
Okay, good. Let's move right along. I assume we can skip the consideration of the relocation of the Larry Dahl Monument. Everybody's good with that? Okay. Prac annual report.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm looking at it here, and it may be here. What about chewing tobacco? Is that brought up in here?
Tobacco products is mentioned.
Is tobacco products in?
I believe it was.
Yeah,
It- but not limited to any tobacco. Oh, well, it's all smoking related, lighted, smoking, inhaled
Any
vapors,
tobacco.
mist, lighted
That's
cigarettes.
Capable of being smoked.
People
Not
being
limited to
smoked, and
any
that was my
tobacco.
concern.
Yeah, it's all smoke related.
Yeah.
Well, electronic cigarette or similar intended device, vapors
thing.
and mists.
But that's similar.
It doesn't address
It even
chewing
says that. It
tobacco.
says it's similar
Oh.
device intended to emulate smoking. So this is clearly inhaled smoking related.
But it says any tobacco or cannabis product.
But it's still, I think, making the reference to
Yes.
inhaling.
Yeah, it's all related back to inhaling.
Yeah.
Well,
Being
does
smoked.
chewing tobacco, does somebody else chewing tobacco, is that a hazard to my health?
They don't have a cup.
Well, I think the main reason to the primary reason to to ban chewing tobacco or snuff products would be more from a maintenance or a litter type of, or I guess
Promote healthy living. I mean, chewing
Promote
tobacco
healthy
is
living.
horrible for lip cancer, mouth
And,
cancer.
and something's going to happen that chew tobacco at one point or another, and you're in the park.
Yes.
I don't think I think it'd be easy to inhale or otherwise use.
And I'm going to just chime in as far as enforcement. It was very difficult to ascertain whether or not somebody has, depending on the amount, tobacco product in their mouth. So
Or chewing
and
gum, yeah.
it would be very difficult on the enforcement factor to engage in that conversation.
enforcement to me is, while enforcement is important, that should not be a consideration in whether we
Promote health.
promote or don't promote healthy living via a policy.
I agree.
So I have no problem. I mean, I think if we change this, the whole first thing is smoke in the park, and
Yeah.
the theme of this paragraph would need to change. It
So
would be
I can have Bill look at this in terms of any tobacco product and to include
yeah.
and let Bill kind of wordsmith that.
Yeah, right. And I'm not too concerned as long as we get those inclusions in there. And I'm definitely in favor of that. I don't have any problem with it.
Yeah.
Everybody, Roger, Joyce.
Somebody said in our last meeting that jaywalking is hard to enforce too.
Yes.
But,
Yeah, I think going back to yours, it's healthy living,
yeah.
Yep.
and it's also an example to the children that play in most of our parks. And staff members having to deal with stains on concrete or benches.
So are we adding a line 12? Is
No,
that what you're
I
saying?
think-
Just expanding 11.
I think 11 gets a few wordsmith changes
And-
to include that.
Right, can we, this is our last meeting
Well,
before September?
yes.
What I was going to suggest is we put a motion to approve this with amendments, and then we could, she could send it to us without us having to wait all the time, and if anybody doesn't object to the amendments, then we proceed.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's a great way to do it.
Yep.
So I move that we adopt the ordinance change here with potential amendments to be approved by, through communication with the members.
Second, and discussion, you had your hand up?
Yeah, just to tie in with what you said about maintenance issues. If everything that we've done in the whereases has to do with secondhand smoke, we might want to add one, whereas improper disposal of tobacco products causes a maintenance, adds maintenance costs and
potential fire hazards.
is damaging to our parks or whatever.
Yeah.
Something in the whereases to
Yeah,
justify
yeah,
including
yeah, sure.
tobacco products.
I agree.
Okay.
Are you comfortable with that,
Okay,
Denise?
so there's 4 whereases. Okay.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Is our pace good for you, Denise?
We're fine.
Okay. Newell Creek Canyon Plan update. Did I? Park, oh yeah, sorry, I was trying to skip that one. The annual report to the commission, now that Joyce is with me. Good, I have a new speaker to help me. Can you see if July 20th is clear on your calendar?
I'm looking.
At the Park Foundation event, we discussed with the city manager the idea of doing the report and then having a Park Foundation member or two follow up and kind of talk about who they are, what they've created, kind of in tandem or adjacent to our report. So that's in the works now. I assume that would be you.
Yeah, it looks like I can do that on the 20th.
Okay. And my schedule's clear, and I've already spoken with Katie, and she was aware.
You are on the agenda.
Yeah.
So are we getting together prior to that meeting to discuss what we're saying, or?
Yeah. I'll give you a call or an email. And the last, when Bob and I did it, it went chair, vice chair, and chair did basically things, kind of accomplishments, and vice chair did
Future
things that are
Vision.
upcoming, or challenges. I think I threw out one or two.
We tried to
Visions and
tie it into the
challenges.
city goals
Yeah.
for on the future.
You might remember, and if in fact this will also be the statement of consideration for their budgeting process, consideration of signage for trails.
Okay.
And I mentioned that before.
Yeah.
And I'll be somewhat specific because I'm not looking for expensive signage. I'm just looking for signage that identifies a trail from I will say, minor and major arterials and from collectors. Well, we don't want to put on every street we have in Oregon City, but to flag those areas in which you can gain access from one collector arterial to another via trails in the park and have those signed.
Is it, so we've talked about this numerous times, is it relatively easy to quantify a ballpark figure for those signs if we were to put that in our discussion? Is it easy to frame?
What I wanted to say is this is a budget item that can be dealt with over a time period. I mean, maybe it's not that expensive to do that, but if it proves out to be problematic, we probably can indicate it as the beginning of a process.
Okay. Okay.
And with that process, because it's in streets, it
Public
entails
Works.
some other folks involved in the process. So
Was it better to talk about a vision?
we're talking about a vision until we can establish the process with streets and what the capabilities are for us to sign where, to what extent.
Okay.
But I think that I don't believe it's not impeding. It would just be making sure that, I think there's some height issues, the types of signs that we currently have, some just logistics to some degree, but then the extent and then who maintains it. There's, the pieces of the puzzle that continue on past the vision.
I just want to make sure it gets pressed forward into the next goal setting session of the commission.
Okay.
I think there's probably a number of things that should be pressed forward in our budgeting decisions, and not to delineate from any one project in terms of priority, but we do have no park shops right now. So our guys are working out of a pod. So when we talk about things that need to move forward in the budget, we do need to have that discussion about what are those things and what priority values do we give those things.
Okay.
How come we are a low man on the totem pole?
Leisure services.
And that's,
That is the,
several of those topics, because of the future, are going to come under Joyce's, and it almost makes me think if there's a wish list of 3 or 4 things that we're able to kind of throw out ahead of the game, so that when they get to that budget process, oh yeah, I remember already talking about that. Maybe if you could email those to us
I can
both,
absolutely.
then we can start championing those.
Has anybody ever seen any signage in grants? Is that something, I wonder if there's a possibility of?
I'm not a
Sometimes
grant expert.
you can look at the grants in terms of there's trailhead options, construction options, design options. It just depends on how you frame what the grant parameters are and how you frame your project. Sometimes you can frame the project from A to Z, and sometimes you are limited. So it just depends. There are grant opportunities out there.
Well, like Mike just mentioned, the idea of Clackamas County tourism. Some signage, like Doug's talking about, is tourism related, or could be.
Mm-hmm.
Bicycle tourism.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's move on to the Newell Creek Canyon plan update.
Again, just a placeholder. No new information has come forward. Just keeping it on our.
I know
future
that
agendas.
things that come across, our computer, just because we are considered stakeholders in that event. So they're still doing a lot of prep work after they got the master plan passed, and actually I need to contact them and say, hey, would you please come and mow the weeds, because I think they are in code violation right now of city code with weeds that are almost 3 feet tall and dry grass. So they're still working on trying to get their funding together.
Okay. McLaughlin to Kenema Trail Planning Grant.
Also a placeholder at this
Okay.
point.
Willamette Falls Legacy Project standing update.
And I would have to apologize because I was on vacation. I didn't press for our monthly update. However, I will press for a monthly update once she gets back from vacation. So we cross paths on leaving and coming back from vacation. So I do apologize. I don't have anything new for you. And I did not attend our internal meeting this week to
Okay.
provide anything.
And Wesley Lynn Park ballot measure. I think I can take this, and maybe Denise will have something to add. I emailed everybody the article earlier, so everybody, Roger, do you see that too?
No, I
So the park ballot measure failed by 6 votes. That's official. I spoke with Tony Conkle at the Parks Foundation meeting, and he indicated that the builder is asking to be put onto the November ballot because there's no charge. So basically, they're going right after it again. So I think that's the
It's
Gist.
the developer needs to it needs to be the city commission to decide if it's going to go on the ballot.
Okay.
And so Tony and I will probably be going to the work session, I'm going to say in July, which is, I believe, the 12th.
So it's fair to say the developer wants to go for the November election, and then the city commission has to go back through the same processes to approve it.
Yes, the city commission needs to have that discussion.
Okay.
They'll do it in a work session. It'll move to a city commission meeting to approve it, and then it goes forward through the process of getting the language approved.
We as individuals probably should maybe put on the ballot, write letters of support if we choose to. I know I didn't do it the last time, but of course we didn't know how it was going to go. But with a six vote difference, something like that, a lot of people don't bother to look at those, but it might make a enough of a marginal difference the next time around.
I agree with you, and the sad part to me was roughly 4,000 votes cast, 890 were left blank. So nearly 25% of the ballots that people did fill out for other things were just left blank.
That's
for that
true,
one item.
but that's not a bad percentage for non-election, city commission and so forth. I mean, that indicate.
Well, no, I'm not talking about the people that didn't turn in ballots. I'm talking of the ballots.
That's what I'm
turned in.
saying. That's not a bad percentage. Because most people are going there to vote for candidates and so forth, and that's what they look at. If you have that many people actually looking at that measure, that's a little bit impressive.
I see. Okay. Bob.
The ballot title, I thought was, I'm sure it met all the legal requirements, but as far as the cost, that wasn't front and center. You had to read all the way down through to figure out who was going to pay for it. And I would suggest that that be considered a little more seriously the next go-around.
Yeah, and I noticed that even in the article of the paper that the developer had some opinions on the ballot language and title, so I have a feeling that will change significantly this time if possible.
And the map that was included with it that confused a lot of people.
Yeah,
And so people thinking they're taking away my dog park. And like I said, I talked to several people about it, and unfortunately, once I talked to them, they said, "Oh, that's what they wanted." Well, I already voted, and I voted no. So their ballots had already been turned in. So if it comes up before them again, at least we'll have a few more enlightened people.
For ballot measures, the first thing people look at, in my experience, is the cost. Who's going to pay for this? Then they try and figure out what are the advantages and disadvantages.
I agree.
I know when we had the Parks Foundation at the farmers market, people were actually asking us about that. And once you explained it to them, then they were on board. So it's too bad that it wasn't in really simple language.
Well, rather than perceiving it as an improvement to the park, people I talked to said they felt that it was, the developers are taking away from our park, and we're not going to let that happen.
Right.
But
I think that was a very accurate, misconception.
Well, next time.
next time.
We learned.
Okay, Clackamas Park Riverfront Master Plan update. I think last time we were concerned about how fast this was moving and where the commission was at it, and we wanted to participate more.
So we did go to the work session, and the commission asked us to come back again to another work session, which will be July 12th. We did let them know that there was interest on PRAC's part to be involved in potentially a joint work session, and I don't believe that they necessarily answered in terms of this being the joint one, but they wanted to have more discussion. We're going to provide them with the waterfront master plan. It's a 2002 plan. I think it's 2002. It's Walker and Macy did the plan. It doesn't speak extensively about Clackamas Park necessarily, but it does talk about the RV park and some of those other elements. So the commission did mention that they would like to have that discussion, and they're looking forward to making some decisions. So we did discuss the boat ramp area. That was recommended by our hydrology evaluation. that was completed this winter, and there were concerns and discussions about putting the ramp in the Willamette versus in the Clackamas. There were discussions in regards to if we had it in the Clackamas that the route of
Traffic.
coming in and getting back out to the parking lot. So I think there's definitely some more discussions they'd like to have. We did have a very sobering cost analysis of what it would be in the Clackamas versus what it would be in the Willamette for the ramp, because Oregon State Marine Board is our majority funder for our boat ramp facilities. There's not a high need for another boat ramp in the Willamette, with Sportcraft being above, Meldrum Bar being below, Cedar Oak Boat Ramp being down below. Then we've got Milwaukee just down below that, and it goes on and on down the Willamette. There are limitations to capacities of each of those boat ramps. However, in the Clackamas, the next closest boat ramp is in Barton Park. So, is that true?
No.
I think there's...
It's the park behind the Safeway warehouses. There's a regular ramp there. I don't know what it's called.
So there's fewer in the
Close.
Clackamas. Ours being somewhat of a regional facility coming right off the interstate. It's on the Oregon State Marine Board's list of high priority facilities. In the waterways, they do a plan such as we do for our streets and the traffic and the capacities. So Oregon State Marine Board is kind of our guiding force for boating facilities. So they also become kind of the guide of where they should go, and then they put their funding to it. So if we wanted one in the Willamette, nobody's going to stop us from doing that as long as the permitting works. It would be more difficult to get permitting in the Willamette in that area than it would be in the Clackamas. The problem is then we look at funding. In the Willamette, we would not have the funding support more than likely from Oregon State Marine Board or ODF&W, Department of Fish and Wildlife, that we've gotten in the past for our facilities, being that that's not a high priority stake area. So would the city be interested in funding that in full capacity? The construction cost to do that within the Willamette is potentially 3 times as much as in the Clackamas, based on the geography, the river flows, the value of grading and steepness you have to obtain for slope for a boat ramp to come into that area. The other part is maintenance. The scour that you see now along the Willamette River, it's all pretty barren because of the capacity of our flows. Sustainability of another ramp in that area. Sportcraft is kind of in its own, kind of got a quiet spot, so it doesn't get a lot of force of current. So we discussed all of those points, and it really comes down to, if that's where the city wants to put it, does the city have the capacity or the want to fund it? So the discussion came back to leaving it in the Clackamas, where the experts have said it's the best placement. Then it becomes the functionality of the parking and the flow of traffic. So again, no decisions were made, good discussions. We're going to go back to the work session again on the 12th with the waterfront master plan and some other supporting documents that relate to the waterfront. You're welcome to attend. They may or may not engage PRAC at that work session, but at least you would be a participant of hearing the information firsthand and maybe have recommendations down the road.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. What time is it at?
I believe we are at,
Or do you just want to get it to me?
I'll get that to you. I think it's 5:30 or 6.
I will do my best.
What date again?
That's July 12th.
Be a Tuesday?
It's a Tuesday. It's the first Tuesday after the first commission meeting.
If I might make a comment, the commission had heard basically the same presentation that we heard in terms of the, first of all, the 5-year boat ramp and then the new one. And The commissioners raised the same kinds of concerns that we had in terms of loss of parkland in that particular area. So, and I know there were, I think, 3 different versions of the access to that particular boat ramp, but we had the same concerns about that, and the city commission raised it itself.
Good.
Can I ask about the temporary fix to the current boat ramp?
That's on our agenda still.
That's
I
what?
can move it on.
Go for it.
Okay, so the Clackamas Park Boat Ramp repair construction project.
I see that now. I had to move down to it.
That's all right. We are, we have just received on the 28th a grant award approval for $135,453.80 from Oregon State Marine Board. The project went to bid. We received the bid packets on the 23rd on opening. So they did the bid opening while I was on vacation. I think there were 4, I want to say there were 4 or 5 bidders. The range was just under 168,000 to just over 320 was the range of the bids. So obviously our apparent low responsible bidder is going to be Marine Industrial Construction. They are on the agenda for the July 6th meeting for the contract award for just under $168,000. The city's match to the grant is about just under $40,000. And so the project in total for the grant includes our engineer record, which is just under $10,000. That's the person that comes, does the kind of the inspections, questions, make sure that what's on the construction documents and what's in the water are the same. They reconcile problems or questions as the construction is going. The construction project starts on actually physically can start on July 15th. The in-water work period starts then. And the in-water work period ends on August 31st, which means our project must be completed by August 31st. It's a very tight window from the time we are bidding, awarding, and starting this project. So it's going to be fast and furious. But all good news.
I just have one question.
Yes.
I thought last meeting you had made a comment that this particular type of project didn't necessarily go to the low bidder. It was the lowest qualified. So could you?
It's the lowest qualified bidder. This bidder, the engineer of record goes through their bid, make sure that what they put in the bid, we have what's called a schedule of materials. And so they go through the schedule of materials and make sure that the quantities match and that they haven't missed any product.
Okay.
So the engineer of record went through the bids. This apparent low bidder, their schedule of materials, it looks right. The part that probably helps us a little bit is that they are also doing the Cedar Oak boat ramp. They're already going to be Westland.
Oh, okay.
They're already going to be in our vicinity. So mobilization costs are probably lower. At this point, you know, they have 2 projects in the vicinity. It probably costs them less to do that and move people over than to move to another part of the state for another project. So those are assumptions on my part. The other bidders were significantly higher. Our engineer's estimate was 120. It falls in line with our engineer's estimate. We estimated, based on the engineer's estimate and the current cost of construction and what bids have been coming in, that we probably needed about 150. So when we went for the grant, I was estimating in the ballpark of 150. So the city's making up a slight difference in terms of the amount of dollars we're putting in as match. So the match money is $39,000 and some change, and we'll end up doing about almost $42,000 just to make up some of the difference in what we had put in the grant and what we are doing as match. So as far as funding capacity, with the grant, with the match, in our current existing budget, we can handle that.
And is that coming out of Parks budget or
It is
general
coming out
fund?
of Parks budget. And
Was it already in the budget for this type of a?
it wasn't a set aside because we didn't know if we were going to get it or not with permitting and everything. But we have a general pool of money for park improvements.
So we're not robbing from something else to do this. Good. Any other questions? Right, thank you.
Yeah.
Other general business. During the work session, we talked about bringing up the Park Day event during this point. So to regroup, Doug, we were kind of, were you here for part of that? Okay. So the Parks Day event, we were discussing all the elements of it, setting up the booth, what other groups could be invited to participate. Then the discussion was along the lines of what's the overall goal. Mike reminded us kind of the original idea was more of an open house through a number of parks, and where you're encouraged to visit each of the parks in the event, and it's kind of morphed over. This is the 4th year, and so the question then kind of came up: should we continue with what we already have on the schedule, or should we kind of pull our participation from the event this year, and then at a later date regroup with maybe back to the original goal for something different next year? Is that kind of a fair summary? So I think the discussion for tonight is simply, should we participate or not? And then we can always, either way, look forward to how we do this again next year. I think there's elements either way that are important. So during the break, I asked Denise if she would take a minute and kind of talk about it from the staff's perspective. I think they see our benefit or our waste of time, frankly, pretty clearly. After these events, is there a benefit? Are the public getting the information from us? Is this making a significant impact in the community?
And I think staff, we usually have at least 3 or 4 of our staff on site for this particular setup and tear down and public engagement. And the staff, their feeling was that there was low to minimal community engagement at the last few, and that, their time they felt was probably better spent in other ways if that's the kind of engagement that they were going to encounter in the next ones. Again, that doesn't mean that future ones can't have a different way of engaging, and that's a viewpoint that we need to maybe look at for future.
I guess my question is that Rochelle was going to look into the balloon guy and some other stuff. Have we signed any contracts with anybody
haven't.
regarding that? Okay.
I asked her to wait until there was this discussion to see if there was any change of thoughts.
I kind of see that there's maybe 3 options. One option would be continue exactly as we have planned. 2 would be minimal participation. 1 table, 1 or 2 or 3 of us simply volunteering and asking nothing of city staff. And then 4 would be, and then the third element would be not participating. So 1 would be continuing exactly. 1 would be not creating overtime or extra staff time. And my concern there, the reason I went down that road is because of how short staffed we are right now. It's pretty amazing how much time people are having to spend at work.
So the scaled back version, instead of having these booths up by the concession stand bathroom area, would be to set up a booth down by the movie screen, so that people could come by, pick up brochures regarding the Willamette Falls Legacy Project, brochures about where all the maps of the city parks, walking trails that we have listed, so they could pick up information. And possibly still even do the door prizes, since, giving away a few swim passes to generate use of some of our facilities would be part of a scaled back vision instead of having.
I'd see that, and Rochelle
not-
has to be there anyway, so
Yes.
there will be a staff liaison there.
There'll be a couple staff. We usually provide some seasonal staff to that one as well.
But I mean, as a managerial liaison, there would be somebody there. And it also would be an opportunity where I still don't think that we could prohibit, that we would, I think it'd be a good opportunity to encourage the Parks Foundation participants to maybe take a more active role at that table, whether that be PrAC member ones, or in other words, I think you guys could go out to your group and invite people, and we just make it as best it can be. But that element would be basically saying to staff, do not staff what we're doing any more than you would have just done with the movies.
Would we be able to pass out literature about the November ballot?
Yeah, that's problematic.
I don't think
I don't
that
think
that's.
it's
not a
out yet.
city representation.
Yeah, that's problematic.
And it wouldn't be out yet,
No.
fortunately.
Just curious.
So what do we
But
think
if,
about
but
the
if
three
people came and
options?
asked us about that,
Well, then it's your
you know,
personal opinion.
yeah.
We take you over here behind the screen.
Yeah.
Well, let's walk down there and take a look at what we're talking
Yeah.
about. What the developer would like to do. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Last year, I think it was last year, not the year before, but it may be the case the year before, wherever we had the tables positioned, a lot of people weren't going around them. And I think we had to go out in the audience a lot to distribute stuff. I think near the screen is fine, but we may want to have a couple tables spread out and have people staff them where we catch more of the people coming into the park.
Yeah, somebody, when you were in the work session, or your meeting, somebody else brought that up. Was that you, Joyce? Somebody brought up the look, or maybe
Yeah.
Blaine. Somebody brought up that same
Uh-huh.
concern.
Being more connected.
So, and I have to say, I didn't notice that. I thought being near the bathrooms seemed logical, but I didn't necessarily notice how that impacted
No,
traffic.
I know that Doug and Bob had to go out into the audience, and they would head out to where people were setting up their blankets and
They were wandering
handing
in
out.
from all over.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he was a
that's
little
true.
Pied Piper out there, because they were coming in from the back way and never got up to the concession stand area.
The way Joyce described it, it sounds like that's what we've been doing.
What?
I mean, the way you described what we might do sounds like what we've been doing.
But
The only
not
thing
set
that
up
we're
a
missing
booth.
is the other people that came along without the bouncy house. So it sounds, if we go along with that, that's pretty much what we've been doing. 'Cause It'll take people to do this.
Other than I think that the key difference is who's got a folding table, who's got a banner. We're not asking staff to be there and unlock a place to just get all that stuff for us. I think that's that third option I'm referring to. Are we taking this on completely ourselves? Has somebody got a folding table, a card table at home they want to bring?
And we
You know,
can
those
still
sorts of things.
provide those
Okay.
and provide access.
I'm just
them.
trying to
Yeah.
say that third option is minimal staff input.
The bike shop has pop-up tents, and TB said that
Because we're not going to meet between now and then. That's our next meeting. So, I mean, I think are there tables in that room there?
We can
Or
provide
just have
that.
them there?
We would have them there.
Okay. So the only other things we'd need is still it would be the giveaways
The giveaways and some brochures.
and brochures, and then we got it. from
Pop-up
there.
booth. A pop-up booth.
Raffle tickets.
Oh, the
Pop-up tent.
the shade tent.
Yeah.
Is it the first movie that we're talking about again?
It is, yeah, August 5th. And then, so if that's the case, I think last time we tried to be there at 5:30 to help set up.
is there electricity there?
Yes.
depending on where you set up.
Right.
Yes.
There was a 150-foot cord that
Well, they bring a generator for the screen.
So to answer your question, last year where we set up, there would be electricity directly adjacent. If we move the tables over where the families sit, it gets much more challenging.
Well, there's the generator because we use the microphone.
But it's
down
not
there.
usually set up.
The
until
generator's
the
not
end.
ours.
Huh?
The
Yeah,
generator's
that's the
not
movie
ours.
guy.
Would it be legal to, if we had electricity and I know that some people have those, those big popcorn makers inside the little cage, like at Les Schwab?
It wouldn't be anything.
We don't want to be competing with the sports that
yeah,
are trying to
vendor.
do some fundraising with their volunteers at the concession stand.
This is capitalism. Come on.
I think that's why we don't do any food kinds of items, and
Yeah,
so
that's a
nobody
good-
has to have a food handler's card.
Yeah.
I think that Kathy last year provided some candy or some things like that.
Got really melted.
Yes, it did.
So am I hearing a consensus that's probably the better approach? Keep it going. Little
Scale
to
it
no
back.
staff involvement this year, and then we'll regroup for next year.
No balloon animals and face painting.
I'm not going.
Keep your money in the budget for something else.
Be environmentally friendly.
Are we good? Everybody
Yeah,
comfortable with that?
Yep.
Okay. Future agenda items. Mike.
Doug's hand was up
I'm
first.
sorry, Doug.
It's okay.
My eyes can't go. Well, they could.
You don't have fish eyes on it. Both the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council and the Natural Resource Council had a presentation from John Runyon. I can't remember his firm, but his firm is responsible for looking for mitigation lands on the Willamette to mitigate for the Lower Portland Harbor Superfund site. It's somewhat independent of the cleanup, but that area is so built up that there are no real opportunities for mitigation there. And they've identified two areas. One is Clackamas Park, in which I don't think the city will back it, but the other one is Clackamas Cove. And both the developer and the city are interested in having that particular site looked at because they would be looking at the gravel bar. They would at the west side of the cove. They would also be looking on the south side for perhaps developing some kind of water entry off of the Clackamas into the cove itself for habitat purposes. And what I was going to suggest is to invite John Runyon to talk to us because that land directly around the cove will, at one point or another, be Park's responsibility. And so it'd be nice to have him speak to us this fall.
Okay, I would definitely agree with that.
And Denise, I'm sure Pete has the contact. Or well, there other people have the contact too on it. But his name's John Runyon.
Okay.
Mike.
I know I'm tilting at a giant windmill, but I feel like I just need to get this on the group's radar screen. And that's the opportunity, possibly, concerning the Oregon City Golf Course. The legislature was kind enough to take away our option to vote on annexations. And a development proposal for that golf course property is starting to bubble up already. When you think about Stone Creek Golf Course, not only in terms of what it is for a recreational facility, but also it throws a pretty major amount of money into the county's parks budget. And I'd hate to let us see an asset like the golf course, the Oregon City Golf Course, just go without considering what it could be, what it could mean to the city. Even, I know that I can think of two situations recently where 9 holes of a golf course was preserved and the other 9 holes were developed. One on Mount Scott and one at Colwood in northeast Portland. So, like I said, I know it's a giant windmill, But to me, it's an opportunity that doesn't come up very often, and I would hate to see us not think about that as an asset.
I guess I was involved too much maybe on that particular concept plan. I served on the citizen committee as well as having gone through several iterations of being killed by the people. You're gonna have to offer the owner the money that they will have for the development of that site. They developed plans for that site. They invested many thousands of dollars in it. It'd be very expensive to procure it, and the fact is, you'd be competing with Stone Creek, and Stone Creek is a recognized national site in terms of golf. I am sure that Oregon City Golf Course is still operating, but I'm sure it's hard for them to do so with that kind of competition, and I'm not sure the city would want to compete on that level, invest that level of money. I mean, it'd be a big investment.
Mm-hmm.
To make up for the investment they've made and the plans that they already have for that site.
Yeah.
So I'll be with those propellers, whatever you call them on the windmill. I'll be pushing them pretty hard. I think it's well beyond our ability to procure it.
And I appreciate your perspective on it because I know you were involved. In fact, I meant to ask what you did know about it as a part of the concept plan.
Yeah.
So that's good information. Thanks.
Bob? Okay.
Waiting.
I might just so that, I don't know if the plans of the owner have changed, but at one point there was still the possibility of a smaller golf course there. They were looking at work home developments there, where it'd be for people that actually maybe made products there in their homes and so forth, was what at that time she was looking at.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we're going to jump ahead on the agenda now that the city manager's here. Tony Conkle's going to brief us on the hiring process of the new community services director. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Evening, PRAC members. Thanks for having me tonight. So, just an update on where we're at with the community services director position recruitment. So that has been opened and closed. So we received over 30 applications for the position. We narrowed that down to about 18. We've contracted with LPGI, a local firm, to help us vet and do the backgrounds to get it down to 6 to 8 to move forward. So that's where we're at right now. Probably looking at the end of July for the stakeholder interview process, and then a decision, sometime in that 4 to 6 week period here as we move forward and get through the holidays and get everybody back during summer vacation and whatnot. So I'm not sure if there were any specific questions.
Is there going to be a meet and greet at one point?
We're looking at that. The turnout for the community development director meet and greet was poor, to say the least. So we're looking at maybe utilizing an existing facility with a much smaller cost. Not that it was it was a couple $100, but for the effort that went into it, I'm not sure that it was worth it. Unfortunately, for such a public
People are more
position.
interested in parks.
It's a different department now. There clearly are priorities.
So I need a bigger place. But there will be some component of that. It may just be more informal than what we did with the community development director. Mm-hmm.
Are there opportunities or need for our involvement or one or two individuals during the interviews?
Yes.
And where would that be, and kind of what would the need be?
So we would probably model it similar to what we did with the community development director position, where we would have a stakeholder interview panel, which would be made up of non-staff members essentially. So for the community development director, we had the chamber, Metro, why am I drawing a blank? Planning Commission member. So, it'd be similar to that. So I could see a role where a Parks and Rec Advisory Committee member played a role on that interview panel. We also had a represented, so essentially our union, staff stakeholder group, and then an executive management stakeholder group. So there were 3 interviews, 4 individuals to go through. Had the meet and greet, and then that was followed up with interview with myself and 2 other executives for the final decision. So we'd probably model it very similar to that. So I do see a role for a PrAC member to play in that interview process.
Okay. And for some of the members, the HR director emailed
We got it.
3 of us and kind of just inquired, are we available or interested? So I don't remember who that was, but
I thought everybody got one.
there were 3 people. You, me, and you. Yeah, that's right. So if there's others that want to participate, throw your name in the hat, but or not.
I'm not interested in the interview, but I think the opportunity for the public to meet the candidates is a real good idea.
Yep, I agree. I think it's just a matter of the form that it takes.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. And I told Tony the other night that I remember being at Scott Archer's years and years ago, and there were a lot of people in that room that night, though maybe 10 of them were candidates. I don't know. But the room was pretty full.
It turned out when Maureen's position was opened up for library director, too, and a lot of people turned out for that, too.
Smaller room.
I'm saying they're interested in that kind of stuff. They just aren't interested in planting. I mean, many people are interested in planting and living in Beaver Creek.
That is true. We should have held it down there. I think another thing that was asked is, what do I see, in just my general understanding and vision, as somewhat premature as it may be. I certainly had lots of discussions with Scott and was in part in the budgeting process for the last 6 years with Oregon City. From my personal standpoint, and this would be certainly something that I would convey to whoever the new director is, and obviously look forward to their input and their insight as well. Obviously, some of the facility issues are to the point of critical when you start looking at the facilities that staff have to use or cannot use because of how much they've deteriorated is an issue that does need to be addressed. Reliable funding source is another one that does need to be discussed. The expectations for level of service, which I commend our staff. They do, in my opinion, a very good job with the resources and manpower that they have available to them to try to keep up with all of the parks and concerts and movies and every other event that gets put on by the Parks Department. So that being said, where is that level of service relative to what we're willing to invest as a community in those services? I don't know that we've really had that discussion. We've kind of just continued to absorb it and try to do the best we can with the resources we have available to us. And that's not a very good way to manage your resources, nor is that very good for the staff who are trying to accomplish things. It's honestly a little unfair to them. We just went through a 6-week period here over Memorial Day where we were down 4 staff members?
Down 4 at that point, yeah.
Down 4 staff members trying to do events every day. I commend Jonathan for the work he did and his staff for Memorial Day and the events there and the event down at Clackamas Park and trying to keep up with everything else that was going on. So it is difficult. And those are some hard conversations that do need to happen.
It's been mentioned before, and I'm just foggy. Where's the main source of funding for our parks? Is that the general budget?
It is.
And those monies come from property taxes?
Correct.
Okay. And what's the millage rate currently? Isn't that quite a bit under the maximum allowable?
I think it's $4.45. I believe we've got another 50 cents or so that could be levied.
And does that have to be approved by the voters?
No, it does not. No.
And how do we stack up against other cities on that rate?
We're one of the few cities that have capacity left in their tax rate. Most of them are capped out and facing significant compression, so essentially not collecting because of assessed value versus market value and some of the compression that happens there in their ability to collect their full tax rate. So we are in a unique situation in that we do have capacity in what we can levy as a tax rate.
And how do we compare on property values? Are we growing faster than others around our area?
I don't have specifics on that. I think when you're capped at 3%, we are seeing, the 3% increase, maybe a little bit more than that as newer developments, new residential comes on.
Mm-hmm.
But, remember at $4.45, every 100,000 is, $400.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at a new home at $400,000, $300,000. It's not a lot.
Right.
I'm by no means an expert on it, but that question came up on the school board budget committee, and we were very average. If you look across the state, Oregon City was very average when it came to many of those tax type statistics. Lake Oswego was extremely high, and you get other towns like Malala that are low, but if there was a status quo, we were right along that line.
It's interesting you do talk about, because we currently have both police and AFSCME contracts open for negotiation, and one of the things there's some intricacies to the police budget or the police contract as to what rate they need to be at.
Well,
But you look at Lake Oswego, and essentially with their assessed value and what they collect, they could essentially pay their staff twice as much as us.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the assessed value there.
Does the fact that we're the county seat, does that impact our
Yeah.
ability to?
To some extent, the county released their study of what the economic, benefits that Oregon City receives as being a county seat. I think that, I'm not sure how much analysis and thoughtful analysis went into, we have a significant part of it that's not taxable.
Mm-hmm.
We have significant impacts associated with being a county seat, whether it be, the social services that are here, dealing with the impacts associated with that. We look at downtown parking. So there are a lot of intangibles that, are difficult to put an economic number to, and I'm not sure how much went into trying to really value what those losses were.
Well,
If
it
we
was
weren't,
hired
if
by
we
the
weren't,
county, so.
well, sure, of course. How do you say what Oregon City would be if we weren't the county seat for the last 80, 90 years? What would Main Street be? Would it be something different?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not. I don't know. So there is lost value there.
Well, it seems like we've got wiggle room on the tax rate, and if we're that far behind, it seems like there's, and I'm sure there's discussion on that already, but it just seems like we've got to take care of it, right?
Yeah, and, you just remember we are in a 2-year budget cycle, so this is our off year. So this time next year would be adopting the next 2-year budget. So in some ways it is a little bit of a benefit. It allows myself, as well as the new community development director, the new community services director, gives us a little bit of breathing room in terms of preparing a budget. So we'll probably start that process towards October, November, December of this year, prepping in for the election, the new commissioners, the retreat, their goal setting, and then finalize a budget for adoption, hopefully in May or June. Raising taxes is always a tough one.
Yep.
How to prioritize that.
Any other questions? Well, thank you for your time. We appreciate your effort in keeping us informed on this.
Great. No, and as I've said before, I think one of the amazing things about Oregon City is the volunteers. So thank you very much for the time that you put in, and look forward to working with you moving forward.
Good deal.
Thanks. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Appreciate it. You too.
Thank you.
All right, member reports. Roger's usually has the most exciting reports, so we'll start with Roger.
Wow, this is good.
No pressure.
Okay, the Pioneer Center report. The Pioneer Center programs are running at a maximum capacity. The parking lots are on schedule, both of them, with Public Works, and we will know more in early July as to the start date of repairs. We have 2 new water fountains that were installed, one upstairs and one in the basement. And the other thing I have to report is I attended the Natural Resources Committee with my neonicotinoid that I brought up at our last meeting, and so I believe it's in their hands. And they were very responsive to it, so it's good to know.
And then on at least 2 or 3 occasions, I called him Gordon instead of Roger. Sorry.
Joyce?
Just to let you know that Hillendale Neighborhood Association and Tower Vista Neighborhood Association will be having a picnic on July the 5th at Hillendale Park. We'll be at the picnic shelter, but we'll be moving around back to the pickleball courts and everything. Pickleball members will be there to give some lessons. So that will be next Tuesday, July the 5th, starting at 6 o'clock. Bring your own picnic supper if you want to eat, but we will provide cookies and watermelon. So you are welcome to come and see what's happening in Hillendale Park. Just a couple other questions. The landscaping around the train depot area, is that Parks property? Is that city property, and who takes care of that?
It's urban renewal property.
It's urban renewal property.
And there's a tenant, so I don't know if there's an agreement with the tenant or if that is still urban renewal.
Okay, I'm just wondering because they've got some
Who's that tenant?
bindweed taking over some of the bushes. I mean, it looks really nice, but with inside the bushes, I was at the train station last night.
Blaine
Seeing
might
somebody
be able
off.
to help us with
Yeah,
that one.
okay. I'll talk to the possible tenant down there. The other thing that was kind of interesting, and I don't know if anybody else, the city got any other reports, feedback, but on Sunday, taking a walk around the cove, there was a City of Oregon City pickup truck. I believe it was somebody from the Parks Department. I don't know if they work on Sunday. But somebody from the City of Oregon City sitting there. The truck was parked in the shade, kind of back behind the cove, with the engine running, and I imagine that the air conditioner was going, and sleeping in the front seat. So I'm hoping they were on their lunch break.
I'm not going to comment to that one because it would be a staffing staff issue.
But we just want to make sure that we're giving
you were definitely
positive-
heard.
Okay.
And I did receive a phone call on vacation. And
well, that was from William, but yeah.
Well, it wasn't from William, but I did get a call. But definitely, when we hear those, we do investigate, and then at that point, then it becomes
Okay. I'm
a
just
staff
hoping
issue.
the person was on lunch break. And again, there are how many parks in our city? 37? 37 parks, and so I have been to 6 of them so far this summer, and I'm going to get out there and try to get to all of them. But especially talking about Little Atkinson Park, the one right along the creek, talking to people about that one, that little gem of a park. I don't want too many people to know about it, but you need to go visit it because it is such a cool place on a hot day.
To agree.
Okay, I've got a little, just short update for you from the foundation. We had a wonderful event Tuesday night, kind of a combination celebration for those of us that have been working on the foundation for the last year or so. Celebration of the fact that we have our 501c3 designation and we're recognized by the state as a charitable foundation. But more importantly, it was kind of an outreach. Roger invited 98 people, I think you said, kind of the usual suspects in town, neighborhood association people, Trails Alliance, Natural Resources Committee, all the various groups. Roger, Joyce, Blaine, and I were there as foundation members. Bob came, we appreciate that. Sean was there, we appreciate that. Tony was there. the entire night. Rochelle was there representing staff.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Commissioner Mengelberg was there. Eric Underwood, our Community Development Director, was there.
Tony?
Yeah, I said Tony.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. It was a great event. I think we did a really, I think it really fulfilled what we were trying to do, which was get the word out that the foundation exists, and to try to encourage some partnerships with some of these other groups as we go forward. So it was a wonderful event. That's it.
Just a couple of words. The Trail Alliance has now started a bike parking pop-up tent there at the farmers market, and you can bring your bike in and hang your seat on a bike. And so the Bike Concierge is part of that. First City Cycles is part of that, and the Trail Alliance. So it's kind of a neat, starting to grow in terms of its use.
Is it a manned event? Like somebody's watching them, you're checking your bike in, or is it a
No,
place to lock?
it's right next to the information booth
Okay.
where Jackie is. So it's but it's
But not necessarily.
not necessarily
Okay.
right. And then good news: the Trail Alliance received a grant last night for $12,000 for bike racks. So Pioneer Center, Interpretive Center, there are a number of places that will be putting bike racks. So that's kind of cool. Depot is coming along. We're probably still a month out. We had hoped to be July 1, but it's not happening. So, but we're making progress. It's Saturday. We'll put together the walk-in cooler, so that'll be fun. But so let's move along. I just wanted to mention one idea. On the ballots, they always ask, do you want to contribute $3 to the campaign?
Taxes.
What if we sent, like, in our water utility bills, sewer, and had like a green slip in there that said, would you consider a $2 or $3 donation to support our parks?
I think that we've discussed that a few times. I think there was some concern about putting a donation into the water bills along with the fees that are there. We've also looked at potential of putting a donation into our registration. I know we had done that when I was at Westland and garnered some donations that way. So we're discussing it and talking about it in terms of options to create some additional funds in our parks funding for donations, at least. So
Simple way for me is always when you can round up. I may not do 2 or 3 extra, but if my bill's $93.17, but if
we would
1,000
like
is-
to do that. The part that's difficult is the software we use.
Okay.
So we have to put a specific fee in, and there isn't a way for us to make changes that aren't solidified.
Okay.
So and we have discussed that too. We would have to change our software, which return on the investment isn't necessarily feasible. So that is definitely something that's on our radar that we are looking and discussing actively right now.
Great.
Good.
Doug?
There were a couple of other projects that went forward on the board, the Metro Enhancement Board's thing. I'm not sure. I know the Into the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center was doing wanted to get grants to do some of the work there at the site, which of course is a city park, and I think they got the highest rank, but they were covered. The project that the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council forward barely made the cut, but we did make the cut. We look for a matching grant from the nature in the neighborhoods, and we're not getting it, but we have another grant request in there for matching funds. Do you remember what happened to the Girl Scouts presentation on Ladderhead Park? Did they get funded?
Yes.
Yes.
They got
did.
$5,000.
That's great. So some of these parks related to this Scattering Creek, of course, Canyon is one of the parks projects, and so we had several of them got approved in the process.
I think there were 6 total.
And did they all go?
All 6 of them were funded.
Yeah. Excellent.
One that's on the Takashina didn't, and I would assume that came across with your 6.
That was not one of my six.
Oh, okay.
That was, we had actually support letters for 8 projects that went to Metro Enhancement, and the Sister City project was one of the projects that Kathy had done the support letter for.
Oh, okay.
And that was the one that did not.
Okay.
But I think all of the park ones, that wasn't
Right.
necessarily,
I got you.
Pioneer Center wasn't being counted as a park one.
Okay, I also attended the Oregon City Parks Foundation meeting the other night, and really appreciate the great work that Roger has done, and also Mike. So I think we're off and running with the Oregon City Parks Foundation. I drove by the library today, and I was interested to see some of the new equipment out there in the back side of the library. And it looks like the project is moving right along. I've forgotten when they're supposed to be finished, but is it October or something like that? October? It's moving right along. I also had a chance to visit with Tom Lovell. He's the Oregon City High School principal. And we talked about the new person to take over the construction program. And they've hired a person that has a terrific resume. I believe he's from Boise, Idaho. But he has he had great recommendations, and they're just really pleased with the hire. And of course, I was reminded that the high school primary goal is to service the students in the best way they see fit, and of course, part of that would be doing some work for the city. But I was reminded again of their primary mission. I was thinking that we ought to invite perhaps the superintendent, Didway, although he's told me 2 or 3 times to be sure and talk to the principal, because he's the one that really is on the ground with this project. But invite him to a future meeting where we can have a chance to meet the new staff person and the superintendent if he's available, and the principal for sure, just to get acquainted and to listen to their ideas on what they have in store, and to share, our support and what we'd like to see, and perhaps what we can do to help them. I haven't heard that part of the conversation, but what I've heard a lot from us is what they can do for us. I'd like them to hear from us what we can do to help them in their mission. Anyway, I felt really good about the conversation, and just to say again that perhaps after school starts, maybe October, November, when the new person gets his feet on the ground, we can invite him into a meeting and get acquainted and see what they might have in mind. So that's my report.
Thank you. I agree with that. Let's look for the October one. I wrote it down and kind of keep that in mind. And maybe if we can bring it up in September, just to push that forward. I think that's a super idea. Maybe even an opportunity for them to bring in some of their kids and talk about that too. And they've been here before when they've pitched ideas. So I had a couple comments too. I was sitting in that foundation meeting, kind of looking around the room, and just kind of gave me a sensation of feeling proud that Roger had that idea and that you've gotten on board and you guys have ran with this, because I didn't come up with it, but it made me feel great that somebody did, because there's all these different ideas running around out there, and good ideas sometimes just vanish away, and this one didn't. So I'm really proud of you guys and what's been accomplished. It's just amazing. And I started thinking about how funding is, dies down, and Tony talks about all that. Denise talks about unfunded maintenance, and then you get this group of 8-10 people that are meeting in their homes, not serving on a committee in particular, just sitting at their homes trying to make a difference. That's good, because I'm the one with the little kids in this group, and we're still using those things, but then you got the pickleballers out there that are doing their thing. So I just wanted to say that it just made me really proud to see citizens standing up and doing something so significant. I was going to touch on what you said. I went to the Metro Enhancement Grant meeting last night, and the two key pieces that stood out to me was the Girl Scout ones, because they've sat here so many times and talked to us about their plan. They got a grant for $5,000, and that's paying for the consultation fees. So basically, like when we do a master plan on a park, that's how I see this. They're kind of trying to do a small master plan on that park, and they just got funding to do it. Independent, again, of us. I mean, it's amazing. Some citizens came up, said, here's a problem, and they're addressing it. And it's just exciting to see that. The pickleballers, they got $25,000 to work at Hillendale Park. That's pretty amazing. They said that last night there were double the amount of applications as usual. And they funded probably 2/3 of the list. Normally it's kind of all funded. So it was amazing to see. Pickleball was number 2, if I recall, on the priority list. So they cut it at about 10 or 12. And it was interesting that the consensus of the group on the average was that the pickleball was a very high priority. Their presentation was good. Their packet was extremely professional. And again, that's the same thing. That group came to us, and you never know whether they're going to show up once and come up with an idea and disappear. Some groups have, but they clearly didn't. So that was exciting. I think that's all I wanted to talk about. So recreation update, and we can skip the boat ramp.
So recreation update, again, I apologize, I was on vacation. The recreation updates are in paper format for you. And I apologize, I also didn't get double-sided, so usually we try and preserve a few more pieces of paper than that.
More room for our notes for tonight.
Yeah, so no paper.
Take notes.
Barkley Hills Playground, we've been working with the high school construction group on that project, and school's out now, so they are done with their portion. Our guys have picked that up, and we're about 90% complete. The surface for that playground is, we're discussing how we want to go about it. The current surface that we were intending to do is the tile surface, the soft rubber surface, is up to 12 weeks out. And we would like to get that open sooner than later. So we're looking at some other surfacing, still in the rubberized category, because it's the least amount of maintenance for us and seems to last the longest. So we're looking to hopefully still complete this before the end of summer so that there is some time to utilize it.
Can I stop you on that one?
Yes.
So just because the rubber surfaces were such an issue, the only thing that came to mind was if the library's going in and they're getting rubber surface and we're doing this place, it seems to me that the priority should be put on getting the right rubberized surface and not the time.
That is the objective.
Okay.
So looking at the time, but also looking at the implementation, the types of materials that we have available, and the cost factoring. So we're looking at an equally sustainable quality product, and it would just take less time to bring in. It would be a different surface than what we've used, but it would also give us the option of looking at tiles, chips, and we're looking at potentially a pour surface.
Okay.
So it gives us the ability to have the look-see at what works best for us.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So
So maybe trial different
it would be a
elements.
pilot in our program here that we don't have, but it also has been researched to be a very sustainable, very safe type of product that's been used in other agencies. So we wanted to look at who people have been using, are they happy with them? We're looking at cost factors, and the cost factors are looking to be about equal to the tiles to the pour-in place.
And then the only follow-on to that is, has the library ordered their tiles?
They're already set, yeah. Those have to be pre-ordered in
Okay, so that's not an
Yeah.
issue for that project.
They're done, yeah.
Great.
So you're looking at a combination for Berkeley Hills? Because I know that
No.
at
Well, yes and no. There's a portion of Berkeley Hills that is chip, and the new structure is where we have curbing. So it's got a concrete surface and a curb, and that would be a pour-in-place or a tile,
Okay.
rubberized surface. What we're projecting for future playgrounds is to go away from chips, doing the concrete curbing to contain whatever our surface is. But that's kind of something that we're forecasting in our future, because chips are predominantly having to be replenished each year because we don't have what is considered typical curbing that are in the modern day chipped playgrounds. So without curbing, they just kick out.
Stopping at Kalama Park,
Mhm.
and their big riverfront park and the big children's play area, I thought it was interesting is that at the base of the slide there's the big rubber thing, but then there's chips all the way around. So they have just rubber at certain points, so it's kind of a hybrid kind of surface thing going on. And so I just wondered about.
We've looked at those in terms of sustainability and the types of clientele at certain parks and the areas of the Portland Metro suburban areas versus our parks. We have a high tendency of vandalism. So we've had those lay-in mats before, and those get torn out. And so, we're looking at options just like that. What's feasible, what's not feasible.
Yeah, my other thought, going back to, I was really sold on the tiles concept because of the maintenance, the ability to replace, and you buy several extras, throw them in storage. Pour in place seems like you wouldn't have that same option, or is repair easier? I mean, somebody tries to slice out some chunks.
They slice out some chunks, and you have a patch product that can be placed in.
Okay.
Might not match perfectly, but same with the tiles. That exposure after a while, they won't match perfectly.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, we've been researching, trying to find the most sustainable, value-oriented, safe products.
You guys do a hard job. Thank you.
Yeah.
So in the concerts, we've identified that our parking is always tight. So Rochelle has partnered with the Bike Concierge for a bike corral, and they are going to do an incentive program of a Ride Your Bike raffle. They'll have some prizes that have been donated for that. So those who are riding their bike in and parking it in the bike corral will get a raffle ticket. And so we're hoping to alleviate some of our parking congestion down at the parks, concert in the parks. So that is a new concept that we're implementing. We want to get that word out for those who are bike enthusiasts or want to be bike enthusiasts, that there's an incentive to come down to our concerts in the park this summer on your bike. The Glen Oak, I'm going to skip Clackamas Boat Ramp since we already touched on it. The Glen Oak Park, Oregon Parks and Recreation Department local government grant. We put in for it, we did our presentation, and this is our first time being declined. So we're awaiting the feedback. They usually give you a feedback, just information, so that moving forward you at least have some good information of why it was declined, or if it was just a priorities, we didn't fall high in that priority level, or what the issue might have been that declined us. So we're waiting to hear back in that feedback material. Waterboard Park illegal tree cutting update. At this point in time, there's no new updates to provide. And Tony touched on the hiring process. And I think, unless there's any questions regarding what we gave you as the monthly updates, the only other new update is the RV park is open. We had 32 spots full in the first week of opening. Along with having it open and that many people, we did have some unsavory things that we also had a couple of arrests. So, with the 32 couple incidents, so barring anything, we had 30 happy clients and 2 not so happy clients, but of their own accord.
Could you, just because this is a park and there's problems in the park, could you touch on what those problems were? Just in are they, not knowing what they are they general camping related problems, something, or were they just criminals that came in?
There you go.
Okay.
That would be a good way to describe
So
it.
it's not
It's
something
not-
related to the campground.
It's not related to responsible RV park users.
Right. Okay. That's what I was
So
curious.
these were non-responsible RV park users.
Okay.
So, but we had 30 happy RV park users. We did have a wedding down at John Storm who was very devastated that the RV park was not open when they arrived, but extremely excited that we didn't ruin the wedding because they had the RV park open and the people that were coming into town had a place to stay. So they had planned the wedding in advance, hoping, our general rule is the RV park is open at this time of year. So she was devastated and then very elated and super happy client when we were all done with that.
Good.
So,
Perfect timing.
yeah.
I have a question regarding this packet you gave us
Yes.
about the activities, and in that there's information about sponsorship for the summer concert series. And were we not fully sponsored this year for the summer concert series, or why was this included in the packet?
It's just as informational that says how we sponsor. This is how we get our
How you request
concerts
sponsorship. Okay.
sponsored and our function because of sponsorships. So the donation packets show what level of sponsorship we're offering, what you get with that level of sponsorship, and I believe in the last month's report, I reported what that dollar amount was that we've garnered for sponsorship, which is above and beyond any of our previous years.
Okay.
I guess I got to donate 100 to you.
A request. One is you have the Conscious of the Park schedule. Could you email us the movies in the park schedule?
I think the movies are also in here.
It's on the website I touched. Oh, it is, right
Yeah.
at the bottom.
Very
Oh,
front
first
page,
page.
bottom,
Oh, okay.
First
tells
page.
you the date and,
Oh, first page of this one.
yeah.
Oh,
Single
okay.
packet.
Okay, all right.
And I believe Rochelle has those posted on our Facebook site, and I
Yeah.
think she was
They're on the city website.
putting them on the city website. I was gone, so I haven't gone to the city website.
Parks Day event is the Never Ending Story.
And what is that's the Never Ending Story?
The Never Ending Story is the Parks Day event, and then Inside Out, then Jurassic World, and then Minions.
Okay. The other question is the date of the volunteer recognition.
Oh,
Ooh, I don't have that in front of me. I
That's
believe
okay.
it's
I'm
August.
just requesting an email.
Yeah. You will actually get a letter and all that information from us very soon. Very soon. So,
Okay.
those are,
And
So
but-
without, now that we know we didn't get the OPRD grant, what does that do as far as budget, time frame, still moving forward with that park?
good
I
question.
think we're looking at the budget in terms of what we have upcoming, and if it's feasible to move forward with that now, or if we want to wait till, because it's SDCs, it's not going to go anywhere. What our capacity is, going through the process with hiring a new director. I think we're kind of, I feel like we should hold until we have that new director in position prior to moving that project forward, just based on we're in our final year of our 2-year budget. We're looking forward to our capital improvement projects again for the next budget section, and what is it as our priorities. And of course, as we do our budgeting, we're also looking at the city commission goals and kind of aligning what we do as a department to the city commission goals. So we're kind of in that transition period where we haven't started anything. So the process for that park would be to get the construction drawings finished. So we have concept drawings. There would have to be construction drawings. Once the construction drawings are completed, then you would do a bid for the work to be completed in the park. And then you would look at timing for that, as well as going through the planning department review for, it would be site plan review. We'd have to get through the neighborhood and all the reviews and comment periods, and then get to construction. So the bids, construction permits, and all those things. So it would be, I would say, a little over a year process in terms of getting through all of the pieces of that process, from documents to the review processes to construction completion.
Okay.
And obviously we want to construct when it's not wet, because that site has some constraints just because of the geography within it, that we would want it to be as dry as possible.
Okay.
Sorry, not a definitive answer.
Checking on the.
No,
Okay, go ahead.
but, so what I took away from that is we get a new director in place and fairly soon figure out where we're going. I mean, I know it was a 1 to 3 grant that we were going for, right? I mean, it's not like we lost half of the money.
It was $500,000, and we were putting in a 1.5 million.
1.5, right.
The
But there's
cons-
more than $2 million in the SDC fund, isn't there?
And that was
Already?
just, it was a phase 1 of a 2-phase project.
Right.
So yes, we do have more than that in the SDC funds.
Okay.
Um,
And I mean, I understand the whole process
Yeah.
that has to happen. I just would hate to see us say, oh, we didn't get it, and wait another year before we
right.
move any closer to
My
moving
personal,
dirt.
yeah, my personal concern with looking at that project, more because it wasn't my project, but looking at it now in terms of the construction estimate for the phase 1,
Mm-hmm.
because we have so many utilities and streets, sidewalk, those types of things in that phase 1 section, was our budget going to be able to facilitate that? So what I have concerns with is evaluating what it is we were doing in phase 1 and looking at our estimate in terms of today's construction costs, because we are seeing that our estimates are being really low compared to what the construction bids are coming in at. And I think that was one of the concerns, at least I garnered through the question and answer period, was that, are we sure that we're encompassing our costs and cost evaluations well? And my answer was, as far as we can tell at this point, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at how our bids are coming in currently, we had an engineer's estimate for the boat ramp at 120. We estimated high at 150. The bids came in at almost 15,000 plus. So I would be hard pressed at this point to say that our estimates are encompassing what I think our reality costs would be. So that's my own personal concern in evaluating if we move this project forward and if that funding would facilitate all of phase 1 or not.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
I was just checking on the city website, and it does say that Dan's term expired this year, Bob's term expires this year, and Chris Cook's. And then Blaine and myself and Doug in 2017, and Mike, Sean, and Roger in 18. So.
Thank you. You refer to the positions as opposed to the person. People expire.
Yes, our volunteer positions.
And then not to follow that out in terms of humor at all. Sorry. One of our longtime park staff passed away this morning. He was with us for 18 years, and he's going to be sorely missed. He's been ill for quite a while, and but this was unexpected. So our hearts go out to his family. He has 2 sons, grandkids, and his wife. So Steve Little has been with the city for 18 years and has been an asset to the city and beloved by a lot of people. So not just staff, but he's definitely a people person. So a lot of the community knows him well. So we just wanted to pass that along today.
Yeah.
Apologize.
You know if there's going to be a memorial service or not at this point?
We're waiting to hear from the family. Obviously, this just happened this morning. So notifications came out this afternoon. And I think the family is kind of working through that right now. It obviously wasn't fully expected this soon. His diagnosis was dire, but he was undergoing aggressive treatment. So we're hoping that we'll hear something soon. I know our staff was hit hard today.
Yeah. It's tough.
But our thoughts are with that family. It's tragic and very sad. So apologize to end it on a sad note, but we did want to make sure that Prac knew about it.
We appreciate that. You told me earlier, and I said I didn't remember him, but I do. I used to catch this kind of chipper gentleman on the mower and running around Wesley Lynn. And I didn't know him well, but he was always kind of a friendly gentleman that was always willing to stop his tractor and just talk about the day. And he enjoyed his job and was always helpful. So
I did forget to mention that today was a farewell for Michelle Benneville.
Oh, right.
And all of her years of service. Really appreciate that. And yeah, so.
So don't forget, our August meeting, we're not holding one on August 25th. The Parks Day event will count as our August meeting. And so our next formal meeting will be in September, the third week. I don't remember the date.
September 22nd?
September 22nd. If we've opened and closed applications by then and have some, we'll plan for a 6 p.m. work session or something along those lines. So kind of look for those emails. First part of September.
Just to confirm, the Parks Day is on the first movie.
And the Parks Day is August 5th, the first movie, yes. So, anything else? All right, this meeting's adjourned.